Right, good evening everybody, and thanks very much for turning out for an extra special extended social programme. Normally we've given up by now because it's flyable and the nights are light. Yes, we can all go out flying. Yeah, it's great booking, for a late booking like this. Now, I was getting messages from our guest speaker who said, "Oh, are you sure you want to do this on Monday night? There might be no audience. It's a 5-star forecast." And thanks to our resident weather gurus, Phil and Neil, we managed to cancel that 5-star forecast and blank it all out just so that you can have this evening tonight. So we've worked really hard to get you here to do this. So thanks for coming, and great to see you all. And I'll hand you over to Pete Logan. Most of you will know him, but an ex-sea star from Dales, and somebody that is going to tell us how to fly 100k. Over to you, Pete. Thank you very much.
Hey, so I noticed we're next door to God, so I'm sure that prayer was heard loud and clear. I did this talk a couple of weeks ago at the Dales, and it's not necessarily a lot of monologuing. It's always supposed to be a bit collaborative, so I realise I am not by any stretch of the imagination the best flyer around here. I've brought some talent, Chris. Hopefully we'll be getting some feedback from some of the great and good around here, and helping those who perhaps haven't flown their first big distances, those who are kind of waiting for it all to kind of come together and click, to get some advice spread around. So who would classify themselves as kind of waiting for that big flight to happen? Gee, I'm not allowing you, Jim, I don't think. So, going to break it down into a whole bunch of things, but what I'm not really going to spend too much time on is the sort of the minutiae and the mechanics of getting thermal, climbing, maybe a little bit of speed to fly, but that is kind of taken as read. What I want to start exploring is my glasses on for this. Is how you put together a long flight, what it takes, and how much you're really going to have to prepare for it, what it demands of you whilst you're doing the flight, and we'll go through quite a few of the little bits and bobs that you're going to need for that, how you prepare for it, forecasts, how you fly it, who you're flying it with, what you're doing, what's the etiquette, and then as with my flying, what to do when it's going wrong, because there's quite a bit of that with my flying. But do feel free to chip in. Let's make sure I haven't missed anything. Okay. So it's actually a little bit of a mission. Is flying a long way on a paraglider. It takes some thought. You're going to have to solve problems, you're going to have patience, and you're going to have to switch between all of these at the same time. There's cooperation, there's sometimes just saying, no, I've made a decision, that's wrong, going out on your own. That is the slide I was wanting. And so what I wanted to sort of tackle first was, I've sort of entitled it 100k bust. This is just approaching Fremington Edge, which is starting to get you out of the northeast side of the Dales. But 100k is really quite an arbitrary distance. It's, you know, it's a distance when you're doing a pointless activity like flying cross country anyway. So you've got to wonder why you're doing it. And the reason I'm going down this kind of rabbit hole is, you know, there's going to be some patience, some independent decision making being done. You're going to need to know, why do you actually want to stay in the air when it might be getting a little uncomfortable? Why would you want to stay in the air when it's cold and things are starting to hurt at this time of the year, especially with your hands? And so, you know, I mean, feel free to chip in, but for me, 100k or a distance that I've flown to new territory is a mark of craft. It's a mark of confidence. So that's kind of an internal thing. I'm quite happy to admit that about myself, you know. Makes me feel good about myself. But on the other side, what I love to do is explore and see new ground, and that's what makes me go to new sites and fly less than optimal lines. I've got this kind of little mission where I fly shit site or shite site records and try and get the records from everywhere that's lower quality than everybody else managed to fly from. But I don't know. I mean,
can I interrupt? I once had one of the strongest thermals I've ever had was from Fremington Edge on an XC. Why don't you fly it?
We do.
Not very often.
Not very often, no. It's so the Dales membership is a big U-shaped sort of distribution of pilots' addresses, going all the way from north of Newcastle, round and down to Leeds, Bradford, and up to Carlisle. But there's very few of them actually within shouting distance of Fremington Edge. As a walk-up, it's a little bit further than most of our other southwesterlies, one of which is top drivable, Stags, and the other one is where everybody else goes, which is Hawkswick and Night Sky. But yeah, Fremington's good. Chris, I don't think we'd ever go there because that's just shortened our distance to the coast by 30 kilometres. Yeah, but you know, like Liam and the guys up there, they fly that.
You might be good for triangles.
Quite possibly, yeah. Jake Herbert has probably had it on one of his triangles as a turn point. But it's a good point. You know, certainly in the Dales, and don't mean to talk about the Dales completely in this talk. But in the Dales, you do get this in low wind days, particularly low wind southwesterlies. You get this thing called Dales convergence, where because the thermals are preferentially generated on the hills facing the sun, it just brings in all of the air from. I've got a laser. Hold on. Brings in all the air from the Vale of York. It's like I'm prepared, isn't it? Brings in all the air from the Vale of York, and you know, it's quite possible to get pretty damn strong lift there. So 100k's kind of a bit arbitrary, but you know, I mean, there's the exploration side of it, there's the showing off side of it, but there's an internal, you know, this is a craft that I am starting to get the measure of. Or is anybody else flying distances for other reasons?
No, it's all just about, for me, it's all just about exploring.
Exploring, yeah.
Even if it's places I've flown over before, they still look different every time. So
Yeah.
That's about.
But, you know, so what I'm trying to get across is you've got to have in your head the reason why you're going to spend 30 minutes the reason why you're going to spend 30 minutes in a half-up climb when, you know, that's the only thing around you that's going to be keeping you in the air and you're not particularly drifting anywhere. And it might be peaceful, but it's not getting you anywhere until you've got to the top of it. So you need that motivation, is what I'm after. 100k, arbitrary. The reason that you're doing that distance, not arbitrary, that's your motivation for the determination that you may need. So what are we taking on? How difficult is this task? And I do look a bit of data. So I went through and had a look at a couple of years from the Dales, actually. And I did go and look at the Pennines as well on the days that you were flying distances, particularly over 100k. For the Pennines, it's tricky. I'm picking that up. But in the Dales, we had 2100k flights in 2024 on 7 days. So there's, you know, even in the Dales, a little bit more landlocked, a little bit better quality air that's not as much affected by the sea. 7 days. 2023 had been 19 flights, so it was a similar number of flights, but on 5 days. And you can see here, you know, going from top left to bottom right, you know, big distances in red, obviously going down as you go down through the league. So being available on the right days is super important. I don't think I'm telling you anything new. What I want you to take away from this is that on any one of those days, there was no particular limit to how many actual individuals went to 100k. So there's no barriers for a particular number of people, a particular limit of people to be flying that kind of distance. Is that clear? It's a big sky out there, we can all fit in it. So this thing that we're taking on, is it hard? And I would just argue. But first of all, no, it's not hard. And you break down the maths with the kind of air that we have, the wind speed that we have. 4 hours in the air with a 10k breeze, so 10k at height is quite light wind. Two components to that, you can argue that there's downwind flying, there's searching, there's messing about, there's faffing around with committee flying, and then there's solid climbing. But if you just break it down to climbing and heading downwind after you've topped out, 2/3 of the time you spend climbing, kind of assuming fairly, usual British climbs, quite weak. And 1/3 of your time you're going downwind, but much faster. And 4 hours is all you need, but quite often you'll do 100k in less than 4 hours in the UK, particularly with any decent wind on the hill. So Raptors, pretty much any kind of kite or buzzard, they'll do this every day that they can. Insects do it by accident, just by staying young. I work in tech. What's the smallest piece of tech that can do it? And there, that tiny thing. So this device here, it's called an Arduino, has a tiny microprocessor on it. It's probably similar to what you have certainly in lots of places in your car, in your microwave. These things will do it. If they can stay up all day, they will stay up all day for a radio-controlled aeroplane. And the software is called Pennine Soaring. And actually, this is the kind of thing that's kind of being used for loitering in Ukraine, Donbass, and stuff like that at the moment. But it's not particularly complex software. So that's kind of framing it that, you know, we spend 50 hours, 100 hours in the air, and we're starting to get quite competent. But it's, you know, it's nothing compared to what a Raptor spends in the air, even though they've got worse flying characteristics than we have, and nothing compared to the amount of skill that's gone into the actual programming of an autopilot. But they don't even have much in the way of sensors. They can just tell when they're going up and then turn them. It's not hard. But yes, it is hard. So, the other way to look at it is, you know, you folks, you're taking off from Parlick in a southwesterly, and you've got that first 10k to cross, and of course you've left Parlick at base. Good. 10k puts you probably descending Dunsop Bridge. Okay, so that's a little earlier than I thought. Okay, so Dunsop Bridge, is there a climb there? Have you been there before? What is your chance of getting out of Dunsop Bridge? And then, once you're getting out of Dunsop Bridge, what's your chance of getting out of the bike park? You know, the Rocky Garden, Gisborne Forest Bike Park, out of that. Once you've gone Gisborne, what's your chances of, now you're flying across the valley, you're going to land in Settle? You've done that before, and then walked up.
It gets higher.
It does get higher. But one way to frame this is that every 10k, you've got a chance of sinking out. Every section of your flight, you might not complete that section. So how does this look if, you know, if you've got let's say an 80 or let's say an 80% chance of completing every 10k section, and you think, oh, 80% chance, yeah, I'm a good pilot. Then your chance of doing 100k, rolling that dice with only 4/5 every time, is 13% of the time you'll do 100k. Now, if you take that back to a couple of screens ago, you've got 5 days in the year when 100k is possible. You're not going to do it. Not unless you wait 4 years or something like that. When you get to 90% chance, then maybe 40% of those days are going to be doable for 100k. And it kind of works out like this, that, you know, our success factor, if we've got a 0.9% chance or a 90% chance of doing each 100k, given that it's each 10k, then we end up with relatively low chances, and that drop off starts steep and then it starts shallowing out. But it does mean that you've got to be thinking about the present. You've got to be thinking about how I get past, you know, the next X kilometres. What are my best chances of doing that? Is it flying with a gaggle? Is it keeping an eye on ground sources? Is it following my instruments because I've got previous thermals that are mapped on my instrument with thermal KK or whatever it's called. Does that shine? But no. Obviously, on the right day, it's completely easier. It's easier than certainly other days. It's easier given the experience. One of the things you might have noticed, this little logo up here, DXCA or Dale's 10 to 100 Club. There's a lot of frustration on the way, and it's something that I went through from early 2000s when I started flying and sort of immediately fell in with flying cross country. That there's just so many days when you're on the ground well before 2 in the afternoon, watching people disappear on that horizon and watching them coming over you in a sort of regular way. The Dale's 10 to 100 Club, we're trying to share the tips and the hints that are going to lead to less of that frustration as people get their flying careers underway. So, what are the tools that we have? Forecasts are good. A lot of red on the RASP is good. It's quite often not the full days. I mean, you'll see here that definitely, yes. But also, did this look like a 100k day? And on this day, the pilot went from the middle of the Dale, Semmelwater, and went to Langholm, way north of Carlisle. On a day that he was the only one out. And that was 11th of May, so everybody would have been making themselves available for it. I mean, we've just seen, day before yesterday, Jacob Aubrey. Perhaps on a day that...
Slightly windy day.
Pretty much most of us would have passed on, even if we knew we'd have got to the other coast. But you've got to bear in mind that RASP will give you hints. It's not always guaranteed that your 100k flights fall on these days that look like 100k. You know, particularly when you've got holes in it like that. You know, I find, looking at the forecast, that those holes, they could be here, but they could be 50k away. There will be somewhere. I mean, you know, there's obviously the numbers in the forecast say it's going to happen somewhere. But where, again, that's a little bit of... And I don't know if we got it wrong the other day on Courtney Span. Yeah. Should have gone to Ingleborough, shouldn't we? Yeah. But yeah, even last Tuesday, quite a few of us caught the spout, and RASP had said go north. You know, the good air is going to be in the Vale of Eden. Actually, when the convergence set up, and it was quite a bit later in the afternoon, we were probably towards the north end of it, and it looked quite good in the Dales. You know, I mean, when I did get the climb at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you know, the convergence clouds were going into Rubblehead and heading towards England. Hey ho. But on those 5 or 6 days, you're looking at a reasonable spread of conditions. Some are looking guaranteed. Those two, you might have gone 50-50. But you can still pull it. So, if you take anything from this talk, gaggling up is absolutely key, and that's made a difference, I think, to our flying in the Dales. I mean, it's helpful that we go from hills where quite a few people can leave at the same time. I mean, flying from Pilot, how many can you get out in a gaggle if it's a southwesterly or a southerly?
Southerlies are hard. Southwesterlies, usually you can get a few people climbing together.
Yeah. So you can go from the Wolf Feld side of things.
From the
From
Fairstone.
From the bowl, basically.
Yeah. Okay. So from the bowl, you could probably get a decent climb of 5 or 10 people out or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've had
Yeah.
5 and more, very rarely, but we have had it.
Yeah.
The
I should
problem
say.
is cloud base. Because if cloud base is only 2,800 feet, it's 10 you have to basically go bolt away from base. And, you know, where if you're on your own, you
Yeah.
can play around in the cloud a bit longer, can't you?
And so cloud base, you're climbing away early in the morning or midday. So cloud base is going to be low because it's going to rise through the day. But at Pilot, I'm guessing that you have that dilemma because if you leave it too long,
You're almost better off on your own a lot of the time apart. Because you can go in the cloud region.
Yeah, if you leave it too long, you get sea breeze.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it.
so that's your Pilot dilemma. That you know you're flying over hills that are 600 meters high, 2,000, 1,500, 2,000 foot high. And at that time of day, you're only getting to 3,000 feet, 2,800 feet. It's not a lot to play with, is it?
And there's often a small window as well, so in the summer you really haven't got long
Yeah.
between decent thermal activity starting and the sea air coming in.
Yeah, yeah.
It's often
Francis, I
when
guess
you
that's
leave.
why we saw you at Cow Close Fell.
Well, yeah, Logan Dales is just better flying. Honestly, it is. There's a better variety of sites, and there's a different attitude to flying. The pilot's gathering up, and base is usually higher, and it just the ridges are longer. It's
Yeah.
easier to get dozens of pilots in the air, and the scenery is beautiful. So what's not to like about it?
Yeah. And as a good Accrington lad, I have to agree with you.
Yeah, it's the right side of the border, mate.
So, gaggles, and I'll get into a little bit more depth as to how good they work compared to flying on your own. But you know, there's etiquette. First off, you know, you've got to wait. There's been times when you know the gaggle's just been down to 2 people, and at that point, it's really important. You know, if there's 2 or 3 people after you, they can catch up. If you're the only one pressing ahead, if you're down to 2 people, for heaven's sake, wait for each other, because that improves the odds immeasurably. At least, you know, in the statistics. In the round, you've got to be aware of different gliders, different pilots fly at different rates. But you know, one of the things that we're keen on is with new starters in the Dales and with the 10 to 100 club, people buddy up. And they buddy up with people that have similar gliders, maybe in the same area, and they fly at the same speed, and they have indecision at the same speed, ideally.
That's good.
Pardon?
That's a good idea.
Buddying up. Yeah. Wait on the first climb, regroup at base. Always try and regroup at base because you know you can always go off to the side of the cloud, just fly in the zeros after you know taken the main elevator to cloud base or to your 45-degree angle so that you don't go into the cloud and worry yourself. Don't keep pilots waiting. There is a point, you know, at which the thermal is going to end, and this becomes a kind of a point of etiquette. You know, you'll be feeling it that 5 people are up there, 300 foot above you, 300 meters above you, and you're just thinking, oh, this thing's getting weak, how am I going to get up there? And you're probably not. So every thermal ends, you're about to fall out the bottom of it. Always keep that in mind, and always be ready to abandon that and actually make a decision, because you can then still be of use to the group, and the group can still be of use to you depending on who goes first. And you can be finding the next climb that they'll, you know, if you're lower down and thermals are bending with the wind, being slanted with the wind, then as the lower down pilot, you're going to get to that thermal more quickly and be able to guide anybody else above you back in. And of course, you getting there first to the thermal helps you catch up with them anyway. There's been quite a few times when we've had committee flying, when there's been no sort of clear decision, and we've really slowed ourselves down and just stayed in zeros, really for no good reason at all. You've only got a few hours, like I say, we've got the 4 hours to fly that 100k. And if it's a good day, you'll have that 4 hours, maybe you've got 6. But if you spend an extra 15-20 minutes pretty much near cloud base, but you know, going around in zeros, group of 3 or 4 of you, that's just a waste of resources.
No one wants to just to leave, do they?
Being the first to leave is difficult, yeah, because yeah, I keep giving myself a reminder every time to get a little mirror to put on my risers. I did that on Tuesday, and I didn't know Pete Darwood and Chris were behind me. Oh, I need some help here. Thank you, you've reminded me. But that committee flying, it is wasting time, and that's wasting distance if you're really worked up about distance. But you know, it's also being in that kind of mindset of somebody else lead. Thankfully, we don't have that kind of thing. Chris gets pissed off, makes a decision and goes, and that's good enough.
Just got to trust who you're flying with.
Yeah.
Decide to leave, you've got to trust.
Trust who you're flying with. That's super important. Yeah.
I think that's why radio is useful as well, because you can have a discussion. So right, it's time to go, guys.
Yeah.
And I think if you say that on the radio, then generally everybody, it's a relief they agree with you.
That's it. Call it out. We are committee flying. I mean, you know, I'm on a committee myself. If you hide searching climbs, there's potentially a better core out there. If you're the highest, use that height. I mean, you'll only be with the people that you're flying with if it comes to nothing. But you might get a better climb. That gets them a better climb. So there's kind of responsibilities if you've got the height. There's responsibilities if you're low down. And you're going to make people wait for you at base, even though your climb's just got to nothing, because it's not going to come back. And then on the glide itself, I used to do this all the time, and I still find myself doing that, and then I have to talk to myself and say, spread out. Spreading out is so important. Thermals are 50 to 100 metres wide. I had a bit of a chat with Aaron Duragasti, or one of the chaps who writes weather in Cross Country magazine, and he was saying really the cores that we can use 50 to 100 metres wide. So how much should we spread out? And I came to the conclusion after a bit of trial and error, we'll go into that in a second. It's about 200 metres. So 200 metres apart, you're going to detect anything that goes through. the centre of two gliders that are line abreast, 200 metres apart. That gives you the best chance of being able to quickly spread apart, and when one of you finds lift, quickly come back together again without the thermal disappearing down the centre of you. How are you going to tell how you're 200 metres from another glider? And it just so happens that a thumb, it's literally called the rule of thumb, that a thumb held out at arm's length. I mean, if you've got shorter arms, potentially you've got a smaller thumb, so that might help. But a thumb at arm's length covers the pilot and the canopy as well. So that's roughly the rule of thumb to be apart. This works if you're 3 or 4 gliders apart. And actually one of the things I did was do a little bit of modelling of this. So I wrote a bit of code, and what we're looking at here is 3 tracks of different gliders. Okay, so there's blue, orange and green, and they all start off here at 0 kilometres, and this is the track going 80, 100 kilometres here. And then this is cross track in metres. So big difference in the scales here. You know, this is maybe a ½ kilometre across. This is 100 kilometres long. And then we've got altitude here. And you can see here with the gliders able to interact with each other, so that's like we're all talking on the radio to each other saying, got to climb, 2 up, come over. Then you can see when I tune this for 1 glider alone to fly on average 30 kilometres, then 3 gliders just fly all day, every time, pretty much. So, because it's computer code, you can run it thousands of times. So, if you tune the number of thermals, and you can see here every time they're going up, they're hitting a thermal, you know, maybe the 2 have disagreed there. But here they find a climb and they all go up in 1. If you tune that computer code so that 1 glider does about a 30k on average flight, with the number of thermals, the thermal density, then with the same thermal density, 3 gliders never go down all day. It's like black and white, the statistical difference. And 2 gliders is almost as good as 3 gliders. So that's the difference that gaggle flying makes. I mean, it's maybe going to save you if you enter a complete shaded out grey area, if you're lucky. I've had flights like that. But in flat ground, with just thermals happening, that's the difference, night and day. And the last thing I kind of wanted to say about gaggling up was, you know, I mean, you will lose the gaggle. I do frequently, and it's just a different part of the flight. I have to get on with it. I've got no choice. You've got no choice. But you've got a choice about the way you think about it. You know, all is not lost. I'm still in the air. I've still got decisions to make. I've still got chances to get back up again. Just assume you'll rejoin. Can happen. So, cue the music. So I wanted to get in your minds a way of remembering changing during, or changing your style of flying downwind, down the route. You know, I chose the foxtrot because it's kind of slow, quick, slow. And you'll find various areas of your flight are just going to be like that. First of all, because of change of landscape, we do not have consistent conditions like they have down south. You are going to fly out of the range of hills that you started from. You're going to fly across some flats, or quite a big valley. I'm thinking the valley around sort of Settle down to Skipton, the upper wharf. Well, no, it's not the wharf, is it? The Ribble. It's partly the Ribble, isn't it? That's going to force you to make some changes to your flying because it changes the physics of what's happening with the sun and the energy on the ground. So, as you're leaving high ground, be aware that you're going to have to slow down, that you're going to have to wind it in, become more conservative, conserve that height. And the same goes for, is everybody clear why that makes a difference? Yeah, cool. Changes of sun on the ground, exactly the same. It's altering the balance of physics that's coming as well. Inversions, I'm going to show you an absolutely class example of that on the next slide. But always be asking the question, you know, what's just changed? What is going to change in 5K's time? And this is a track of a flight we did last summer. A lot of us. I think there were about 8 or 9 of us, slightly separated from each other. This is my track log, but certainly until about here, 6 of us were together. You remember them? Yeah. So we're at Windbank here. Grassington's down here. Middlesbrough and Scarborough, Whitby was around here. Vale of York, big flat north-south valley, probably 30 or 30 kilometres across, I would have thought. So certainly at this point from Ripon's in the flat, but this is Nidderdale to Helmsley, 30k at least, I would have thought. A1 in the middle of it. Have I over-explained that enough?
How high is it?
About 30k. So, day start's absolutely fantastic. You know, it's early on, so we get some pale blues. We're maybe at 3,900 foot. Probably about an hour later, we're exiting the Dales. That's probably about as high as we ever got. But I think we were getting 5.5. Yeah. And, you know, you would just think, you know, damn, I wish the coast was further away so I could just fly even more distance, you know. And then chalk and cheese. And thankfully there were 6 of us. Because it took all 6 of us to get across. And the change of conditions that we had as we got into the valley was the inversion. And with the hills facing the sun, the thermals were ballistic, the climbs were just going straight through and kind of ignoring the inversion. So certainly by here, that's a really steep climb. That's probably 3-4 meters a second or something like that. Happy days. And then all the way across the Vale of York, we couldn't get above that inversion. I mean, you know, you didn't see red on there. We're not getting massively low, but we're not climbing.
Are those colours climb rates or heights?
Heights, yeah.
Okay, thanks. Yeah.
So blues tall. Red is landing. And it just took about as much patience as we had. And then a quick dive over to, I think it was a little bit south of Sutton Bank. And we just got to the low hills, the wooded sort of hills around Helmsley. And managed to climb out of some kind of festival that was kind of going on the ground. I then went and did, you know, my usual scrabbling about, doing a bit of bottom feedery, floundery type activity, and which split us up actually. But by then, you know, there was sea breeze coming in from the North Sea. There was a lot of convergence. These guys took it into Whitby and brought one of our newer flyers, Joseph Edmonds, through to his first UK 100k. And I was a little bit later and thought I'll follow the others, and took the convergence up to go to Redcar. At this point, you can see the sea breeze. I'm going downwind at about 70k over Saltburn cliffs. So, you know, the wind had changed quite substantially at that point, which gives us this complete about face on our track. But it's brilliant. That extended the track quite a bit past 100k. So not unpleased about that. Okay, so situational awareness, super important. What's happening now, and how is it going to change? So the fourth tool we need is kit. I'm going to spend zero time on this. Kit is something you need to be comfortable with. You basically need a way of telling that you're climbing, and a chair that you can sit in for 4 hours. Fine. Instrument, great, to record it, but what you should have is this kind of view in your head. It should just be in there. And the reason for that is that for any one of your tracks, you know, let's say we're going from here, Harlech, you've got a clear run. But at the end of your flight, well, let's be positive, midway through your flight, you hit two matses. You hit two matses, and this one has a big ATZ in it. You've got to know you have to avoid those. And the best way to start avoiding those is to have that downwind in your head and start avoiding it here, not here. Because if you fly, you know, when you can see Thirsk, when you can see RAF Leeming or wherever it is, you have to fly 90 degrees that way. And guaranteed, in the last few minutes of having to fly 90 degrees orthogonal or however, to the direction that you want to take, you will lose the line. So planning early for avoiding going through the centre or going through to the south. And you can see on the previous, you know, we actually spent the height going south so that we could go round the airspace. And I don't think it would have mattered which route that we took across, whether it was right over Thirsk or not. We would have still had the same difficulties with the inversion and the like.
Yeah,
But that...
I I was just going to say, you have the same problem if you're heading up towards Sunderland,
Oh,
where you've got lots of airspace getting in the way, and you really do need to understand that before you try that. But the airspace from Newcastle Airport is
yeah.
a little bit easier to pass than it looks on that, because the first bit is actually very high,
Yeah.
and it steps down.
Second half, I've got a great one of these coming up. But I mean, you can see that this is probably 20k wide, and although this airspace you can go under it for quite a while, from I would say Weardale onwards, heading up to Tynedale and going for Prudhoe. But you'd never get to like Prudhoe and Newcastle because you're on the ground by this point. You know, you've got surface CTA down to the surface and up to, I don't know, 8 or 9,000 feet. So you've got to make a decision one way or the other, and quite often on a flight from Windbank or from Stag's Fell here in a southwesterly, we'll be going past Bishop Auckland and Spennymoor, past Durham. You can get under that. I think that's flight level 7.5, or is it 5.5?
Constant 5.5, I think.
5.5.
That triangle at the bottom.
Yeah, I mean, you can get up to that. That's fine. When it gets to 3,000. And the same goes for Sunderland as well. You know, there's you look at the track logs from all the multiple flights. So much going through here. But that having that in your head means that when you're talking to people on the radio and trying to say plan A or plan B, they also know what you're talking about and you know what they're talking about. Carrying on the fox theme, from foxtrots to foxholes. Foxhole is a defensive fighting position, if you will. I would call it a defensive survival position, because you know it's 4 hours in the air, it's 100k, there's plenty of opportunity for things to go wrong, and they will. Keeping yourself in the air for the next opportunity, that's all part and parcel of getting past this 10k section with your 90% probability and getting on to the next one, giving yourself the chance. So, as something's going wrong, as you've been separated from the group, or maybe as a whole group yourself, this is, you know, something that you're going to have to sort of mentally deal with. And one of the ways that I do that is to say, you know, look, I'm still at takeoff height. I've only just gone back down to takeoff height, or 100 meters below takeoff. That's fine. I've already climbed out from somewhere once today. I know it's already working. Just do it again. Just rinse and repeat. It's no harder than that. And it's always something that's at the back of my mind that I'm thinking of on a glide. You know, it's where's everybody around me? Yes. Can I see any signs of climbing? What are the clouds doing? What are my ground sources and triggers like? Fine. Where am I going to go and survive if it all goes wrong? Can I get to the other side of the valley? Is there a quarry? Is there rising ground somewhere? Is there more sun here or there? So that is always at the back of my mind as this foxhole that I can get back out of. And there's a couple of examples here. There's a place called Sissy Bank. Sissy Bank is, you cross over Wensleydale, which is a reasonable valley, and can be a bit of a trap. So you definitely got to be crossing the valley with a bit of height. Quite often you don't make it, you hit a bit of sink. You can see here that I come in light blue height, whatever that is, at 1240, and I get pretty low. I just hit some massive sink and I'm suddenly in the lower down yellows and oranges. And I'm trying to take some climbs out. You can see a few bobbing up into green. But I'm basically here for 43 minutes. You know, between 20 and 100 metres above a bit of quarry, a bit of woodland, and trying to fight my way out.
Where have you flown from there, Pete?
That would have been from Windbank again. If I mean this wasn't recently. This was maybe, I don't know, 2019, 2018, something like that. But I think last year it's supposed to be the Pennine Soaring club here. But if you'd have come to the Dales last year, it really was the Windbank Soaring club, wasn't it? I think that's all I did last year. But yeah, you'd cross at this angle from maybe Windbank. And you know, really 43 minutes later, I hadn't got the height back. I just went with something that I thought would develop. And if you know these moors, this is all really quite shallow, and you can see a road going up here, so it's not twisting about. It's a straight road, so that's quite a shallow bank. That thing didn't lift off until, you know, the top of the moor, and the moor flattened out and the air properly released. So I was in a bubble for a while. Different sort of style of foxhole. I mean, that's a geographical feature. Go for it. This is up around Pierce Bridge, and much less of a geographical feature. I mean, it's, you know, it was a change in the slope that worked out. But here, you know, I'm kind of, I don't know, 2 times tree height or something like that as I cross the river. I mean, the red doesn't generally get much deeper than that, but you can see here that I'm obviously feeling something. So I've detected some air, but the river goes across here. So this is the low point of the valley. And I'm descending into the low point of the valley, but I'm descending in air that has that feel of there might be some activity in it. So it's just a case of surviving in that until you've got the slight ascent on the other side of the valley, and then the air, you know, it does start releasing 6 or 10 fields later. So again, you know, I mean, that's probably 15 minutes of my life just sort of concentrating, looking at what the birds are doing, copying them some more. Or at the worst, if you've got the option, I mean, from here, there was probably enough of a slope to take off again. Here, the flight would have been over. But if it's you know, if it's not going to work, and if you're going to go down even further, take a pit stop. I think last Tuesday was the 3rd flight I've taken a pit stop at, and continued to fly cross country. I mean, you know, your distance is split, but who cares? You get to see the new area you've never been before. All good? Keeping your head screwed on. So, who has problems with patience? Okay.
You do not have problems with patience.
Actually, well, so I think one of the points I did want to make, you know, I mean, that's a pre-record of thermals that have happened in a random bit of ground. God's Bridge, so it's here on Peace Bridge. No, no, it's not. That's the A66, that's the A67. Who cares? What I wanted to get across here was that even in some fairly nondescript, not particularly upland, not particularly lowland areas, there's thermals that have kind of appeared in the past. But you know, even when you're down in your foxhole, this is a day that you've taken for yourself. You know, it's yours. What are you going to land for? If you do land, does that mean you can get back home, get some painting done, or get some chores done quicker? No, I mean, your days, you've decided to spend your day. So if it's 15 or 43 minutes getting out of this, it's part and parcel of the journey that you decided to do that day. But yeah, more of keeping your head screwed on. This was quite a head game from time to time. The picture is of me out in Brazil in October last year, and I used to remember that I had problems as I left the Dales. You've got this huge sort of area with maybe Middlesbrough in the haze, maybe the North Yorks Moors in the haze, but it's all in the haze, and you're turning around in circles. And I was just kind of, am I north or am I east at the moment? I don't know. In Brazil, completely magnified, because all of the horizon looks like that. And over the course of the day, you know, you're feeling as though you're following the arrow and it's kind of tracking this way and that way. It doesn't feel as though you're flying towards the same points on the horizon that you marked an hour or 2 hours earlier. So orientation and awareness is super important, particularly, you know, getting out into the flats. So one of the things I always do is I'm always maintaining horizon markers. And so when I'm circling, it's road with the roofs, or it's, you know, town with the greenhouses, and then that's in my head. And because you only spend 20 seconds, you know, going round and round, or 16 seconds ideally, it doesn't drop out of your head. You know, it takes a good couple of minutes for things to drop out of my head. But 20 seconds, you can always remember a set of markers. And I do that with a lot of things. So if I need to acquire a bird that I've spotted, I won't look for that bird again. I'm looking for the landscape. I'm looking for the way that bird was tracking at the time, and I'm looking for the way for the ground feature that was behind the bird. So I know which way to look next time I see that ground feature. The same goes for other pilots as well, because despite the fact that gliders are made out of all sorts of fairly day-glow colours. I mean, I started flying when gliders were actually day-glow. You had a puce glider.
Thank you.
Yeah. Puce gliders are fantastically easy to spot, but gliders have, I think the colours are a bit more muted, except for BGDs. They're harder to spot. And certainly fewer people have yellow gliders. I used to fly yellow gliders because I thought they were easier to spot, and the APCO Allegra was cheap and on offer. No, Accrington. I've got short arms and deep pockets as well. But yeah, super important to make that mental map of who and what's around you, but do it with object markers that you're coming round to in the thermal each time. the other thing I do, and the reason I put this photo in, you know, as well as showing you just how featureless it can be, is just making notes. Because you know, my long-term memory is not fantastic. There are various little bits of nags that I want to remind myself of before I actually start flying, and then sometimes when I am flying as well. So, you know, I've got a little pen for the phone that's got a rubber end on it to press the buttons, but the other side of the pen still works. I can write myself a few notes if I need to. And then the other thing that I do is just talking to myself. As long as nobody's terribly nearby to listen. But you know, after a bit of air, you know, you will settle down if you say, "Simmer down, Pete." You know, you will become more alert if you actually say out loud to yourself, "Come on, what do you need to do here? Make a decision." That kind of self-talking, you know, whilst it's kind of simplistic, it does work. You're sometimes in a sort of a stressed environment. Give yourself a break. No one's listening. No one's around. Beer time. Right, for a little bit of the second half, what I wanted to do was just kind of a bit of a brains trust to contribute, and maybe just give a little hint about what it was about maybe the first long flight, or maybe the flight that it came together for them on. And so maybe we've got some. That's it. So I'll start with mine. But you know, what I'm trying to get across is we've gone through the tools that you need, what you need in your head, in terms of forecast, blah 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 blah. What were the things that came together on a particular flight for people that do this a little bit more regularly? So this was a North-South Cup for me. It was, I think, probably 2010 or something like that, maybe 2011. And we were down in the south. We actually lost that weekend, the North, which was no surprise, but we didn't win the tug of war. But lost the 2 flying contests. But this was my contribution to the flying. I think it was maybe on the first day. We're at a place called Milk Hill, which it's a long drive, you know, to Swindon, but it's the southwest or south facing line of hills, chalk hills, quite low. You know, certainly lower than most of the hills that I can think of in the Pennines, and quite shallow as well. But there's 60, 70 pilots there, and we're being launched in groups of 10. And the first thing that I decided that would be something that would make a difference for me would be to get in the air quick. And be one of the first up. It's going to give you the widest set of opportunities. You're not going to have any of the sort of coulda, woulda, shoulda of somebody else leaving. And you can see, you know, down here quite a bit of time spent on the hillside as the day is developing, but you know you're going to be in the front for that early climb out. And you know, I'm sometimes the first in the air. I guess I do my share of being first in the air on a normal XC day, but you know, I'm never going to be 20 minutes, half an hour after everybody else. Once you see other people are staying up, you've got to be in it. I eventually. Oh dear. I quite like this. Oh, there it is. I was actually forced off the hill. There were too many people there, and you can see here, I start leaving low, and then get the climb quite a bit later. I'm actually separated from maybe the second gaggle at this point, and didn't actually join people until, you know, maybe cloud base here past the M4 corridor. You know, I do have clear memories of, okay, so I'm on a task here. Again, the day's my own. I can spend it how I want. I'll do what it takes to survive. Wonderful memories of going over Marlborough with all the boys and girls in their straw boater hats, going in and out of the famous private school there. But it's just relaxing into the day. You know, the forecast says it's possible. You can see people around you having the best of the conditions, and it's a case of setting yourself up as much as you can for that. Nice little section here with everybody going towards Wantage, and then actually we get into this section here, and everybody splits apart. I actually see, given this is whatever it was, 2009, 2010. Yeah, I see some of the tastier gliders, and the Adrian Thomases and the Bruce Goldsmiths sort of disappear over the horizon. Okay, the day's still my own. You know, fly the air that you've got in front of you. Don't worry about everybody else. What I saw coming up was a change in the conditions, and certainly after Oxford, you know, I've separated from the last two people I was with, friend James Goldsborough and friend also Kirsty Cameron. They'd gone off to the left. I didn't know they'd landed, but things had really greyed out. So the lift was still there, and you see here that some of the climbs, they're just not as steep as they were maybe earlier in the day here. And I'm not getting up to cloud base anymore because the energy's not in the day. But I'm not going down either, so you know, maybe consistently flying from cloud base to cloud base is not my skill. Certainly from very early on in my flying career, mincing about with the best of them for a long time with not a lot in my head is something I've just been able to do, and you just settle into it and enjoy the views. And that was my first 100k, landing just shy of Bletchley, near Milton Keynes, which is just kind of up here. Little did I know, I actually just minced over everybody's heads and flown the second furthest distance in the day. And that was just purely from, okay, I'm not racing, I'm never going to get there first. with this level of experience, but I'll just fly the conditions in front of me. Maybe that 20 minutes later that I was reaching that just was 20 minutes more sun in the day, more heat in the air as well. So a little bit of luck was coming together for you there. But taking your opportunities early, getting in the air early, flying the conditions in front of you, and patience. Chris! Phil! No, it's that I've got Chris in front of me here on one of the things. Chris, do you remember anything about this flight to the south of York?
No, it was 12 years ago. You asked me about half an hour before we got here. Can you tell us about that flight? Sorry, not really. Where was it? Where was...
I got a few others. So this is actually, I mean, this is
Dodfell.
Dodd.
Dodd and Weather.
Dodd and Weather, yeah. I mean, it's worth talking about this flight because it is such a classic flight from the Dales. The Dales northwesterly. Who's not been to Weatherfell or Dodd? A few hands up. Yeah. Okay, so I mean, it's probably at least 2 hours, maybe 2.5 hours from here drive.
2 hours.
2 hours. Yeah.
an hour from here.
And we did used to get them maybe up to certainly before COVID, but we've not had many of these big northwesterly days from Dodd and Weather. And so, you know, I think some of the biggest distances from the Dales have been done. Dean Crosby's got himself pretty much down to Nottingham from here, because often it goes north to south, the wind, in the Vale of York and past Leeds. So you're heading pretty much just down the A1. But as you can probably make out from Dodd and Weather, there's parallel sets of hills every sort of 5 to probably less than that, every 4 or 5 kilometres. So you're able, if you don't get a climb off of one, you're able to get onto the next. And you're still over high ground, you're still over ground that's between 600 and 1500 foot. So sometimes you are still pretty close to the ground. But with the route, particularly from Dodd, you follow this curve of high ground here. Over the bottom of Semawater to Buckden Pike, and then from Buckden Pike to Great Whernside, which is different from Whernside, it's the other side of the Dales. Great Whernside, you'll pass Angram and Skyhouse Lake, and you're going down to Greenhow and Pateley Bridge. Got to pass over the Nid Valley, which is quite often a lonely walk out for a lot of people, and a lack of bus service for sure. And then the big transition into the flatlands, you know, heading for Harrogate.
How far is it to Harrogate?
Harrogate's probably 60k. This I think was a 90k flight you did, Chris.
Okay, thank you.
which gets you to the bottom of York. You were probably landing around the big maze there or something like that, wouldn't you?
You say so.
Yeah.
It's the retriever that puts me off trying stuff from your side.
True. Yeah. Well, I mean, if you plan the person who drives you there. You see, from York, there's pretty much a direct train to Preston.
Yeah,
you're fine.
It's why I asked how far is it to Harrogate, because I think you've got to get there, haven't you?
Pretty much, yeah. There's good bus services along this southern road here, and then there's also good services, you know, Pateley to Grassington. From like Pateley and Grassington, you can go down to Skipton, Ilkley, Otley, and then that Otley bus turns into a bus that goes down to Huddersfield.
You've got to be careful of the Leeds airspace, haven't you? You've got to almost flip the corner of the Leeds airspace, which takes you away from all the bus routes.
Yeah,
If
so
you're too focused on retrieves and you try and stay too close to the roads, you go into the airspace.
yeah,
And it screws it all up.
the big landmark. I mean, Chris, as Chris well remembers, the big landmark is just here. Is the Menwith Hill golf balls. So if you keep the golf balls, you know, if you're heading from the northwest to the southeast, you keep the golf balls on your right, you've missed Leeds Bradford airspace.
I remember them.
And you can actually fly over the golf balls and still miss the airspace. You can fly over the golf balls with no consequences whatsoever.
It worried me.
Yeah.
Is this all right?
Just never have children.
Oh no, that's Fylingdales up here.
Is it? All right.
Yeah, yeah, the golf balls,
The
that's
golf balls
reception
don't-
only.
yeah, they receive,
Ah,
they don't
right.
transmit.
Yeah. Probably back at the back end of this, there's you know, probably a bit of haze in the Vale of York. It's not a day when the wind from the Vale of York's going north-south, so you've still got that east-west. But it looks quite inverted at the end of that flight. You know, I think there's still a few hills, rolling hills around Harrogate, but from here on in, that's flat as a pancake. Murphman. Ah! Absolutely superb flight from Portland, west-southwest to Scarborough. Did you land on the beach?
No, I landed next to the motor racing circuit on the
Oh right, okay.
little hill at the bottom of Scarborough.
Okay, so what was it about this flight that came together for you? What did you learn?
I think the first thing I would say is it's not my first 100k flight. My first 100k flight was actually with the British Paragliding Cup. And for me, that's a tip. If you want to improve, it's worth taking part in these competitions. Because on the day they will set a task that's achievable for mortal pilots as opposed to skybots. And my first 100k was from Peak District, as part of the from Bradwell, as part of that. Probably my easiest ever 100k as well, because there was lots of people to help at the start, and then once we got out over the A1 into the flats, it was just textbook stuff.
Yep.
This one was just the flight I'd always wanted to do. Fly to the coast, you can't fly further, job done. And it was just a day which had a good forecast, and I've got some of the statistics here. I started at 10:30.
So you launched at 10:30 or climb out at 10:30?
I climbed out at 10:30.
Okay, I mean that's early.
Took me 5 hours and 12 minutes for the actual flight.
Okay.
Not the time in the air. I was in the air longer than that.
Yeah.
154 kilometres. And I did it all on my own. There was no one else there.
Very nice.
But the thing for me about flying any distance is you'll only do it if you try.
Yep.
That's the key. You'll only do it if you ignore the consequences of going down and just suck it up when it goes wrong and you end up walking for 4 hours, which I've done. And you follow the lift. You don't follow the roads. That's part of the... If you start following roads, you'll never get a long flight in, I don't think. And then knowing some of the local things like getting past Dunsop Bridge, which in the early days we did lots of practice flying to Dunsop Bridge. And for me the key was when I realised that you have to follow the hills.
Okay.
Where the sun's shining on, that tends to be where you get the best lift.
Okay. And that's on the northern side of Dunsop Bridge?
Yes,
okay.
to the north, and you're just tracking along. But again, it's every day's
it's
different.
Commitment to Moorside.
Yeah, and if you see a good cloud that's building over Sladeburn or whatever,
yep.
you go for that.
So you get...
And then Skipton, just after Skipton, Leeds Bradford airspace. If you've got a west or even west-southwest, it's going to take you into Leeds Bradford, and you have to know where it is and just keep pushing north,
So you've got a couple of corrections here.
Yeah. And I was quite close, I was within sort of a couple hundred metres of the airspace a couple of times because the drift was taking me in and I was having to fly away from it. And then just before Pateley Bridge,
so here you've got
I almost went down. I literally was level with the rooftop of the farmhouse on the hill that's just going up before it flattens out and then drops down into
before maybe West Broughton, something around here.
Yeah, it's where the road goes up and then I think it goes past one of the caves that you can visit.
Yeah.
And it's just, you don't give up. Don't matter if you're low, you don't give up until your feet touch the ground.
What month was it, John? What was the month?
Sorry?
What month was it?
July.
July.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is this sinkhole of Nidderdale.
Yeah.
Here.
I've been down in Nidderdale 3 times, by the way. And yeah, there's not a lot of traffic in Nidderdale.
There's not, no.
But,
however, the pie shop at Pateley Bridge, at the mouth of Nidderdale, is, you know...
Worth going down for.
It's worth going down for.
The best cafe in Pateley Bridge is closed now, the one at the market. But anyway, what I found that day was once I got past Harrogate and into the flats, it turned into a classic glide, climb, just gliding to the clouds, climbing up and gliding to the clouds and climbing up. And after that, my biggest problem was I was needing the loo. The last hour at least I flew with my legs crossed.
Yeah.
Over 5 hours.
Did it get up to the kidneys or was it not that bad?
When I landed, the first thing I had to do was rush to the nearest hedge and relieve myself. And as I'm doing that, I heard this woman from the other side of the hedge saying, "Are you all right? We saw you crashing. Are you all right?"
Just give me a minute.
But yeah, fantastic flight, and it's just a case of seeing a good. One of the things I like looking at forecast-wise is the star rating for full launch paragliders. And if you look at it and page through the hours on the day, and you see that
the band
going in the direction that you're hoping it's going to go in, that's a real good indication that potentially you can get a long flight.
Yeah.
Was it a 5-star day?
I think it was 4-star, but it was just extending in the right direction.
4 will do. You know, I mean, 5-star can bring all sorts of problems with showers, spread out. You know, if it's
no sun on the ground.
No sun on the ground, You know, sometimes the day breathes in that, you know, there's so much activity, the air's wanting to rise so much with a decent lapse rate that it takes, you know, it might have showered a couple of days before, it takes enough water up into the air. That then just extends the clouds out sideways, cuts the sun off from the ground, and you've just got to wait for those clouds just to peter out. So yeah, you know, 4-star is absolutely fine, I guess. Cool. Didn't get anything from you, Butty.
You sent me a text at 4 o'clock.
Yeah. But in Brazil, you said you were born
till 6.
You said you were born ready. So another thing to be always looking for, quite eagle-eyed. I mean, this looks like a particularly, you know, sort of class cloud streak coming out of the Dales. This is sort of the flatlands, as Pete Darwood from the Dales was showing on one of his flights. A bit like your climb and glide. It was, you know, on the way to this cloud streak, but you know, he's getting convergence here as well. And so it's always worth looking out for these tendrils. They're either telling you stay away, you know, I mean, if you are, I guess, go the right way. You know, John, you were lucky, climbed here within 10k of the coast. It's almost as high as you ever got.
That day there was actually convergence, a real line running down the coast.
Yeah.
If I hadn't been in the loo, I could have turned right and flown down the coast
To
further.
Bridlington, wherever.
Yeah, wherever.
So
Did you fly through the convergence, John?
I did.
To the other side?
Yeah.
Was it mega lifty at one point?
It was.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was really good.
So this valley here is usually, you know, when Chris, probably you as well, when we've been coming down from the North Yorks Moors, so we'll take off from Model Ridge or Colton Bank more likely, and we've flown across the North Yorks Moors, and you know, ideally you'd want to be going all the way down here, but sometimes you know, it's a bit more west in it, and it's taking you to Scarborough or Brid if you're lucky, but getting out of the North Yorks Moors here and into the flats, you know, the big valley around Malton, the air can be in all sorts of ways. You know, there are times when I've got down low here after Pickering, and I'm flying into wind in 3 different directions, and thinking, you know, I've been snookered. It's like playing chess here, being attacked on all sides. But for you, it looks like maybe this was the convergence climb, kicking off ahead of the sea breeze,
Yeah.
and this, you know, this kind of tendrily stuff. Maybe inland, great stuff. Maybe near the sea, stay a few kilometres inland of it, and that's as good as it'll get.
Worth mentioning, because it affects us a lot, is you get sea breeze coming right down past Settle, and you get that
Yeah.
tendrils, and you're flying above the tendrils
Yeah.
forming under you as you're trying to cross the valley to
Yeah.
Settle.
Yeah, which is kind of what I'm going to get onto actually. So, Phil, was any of your learnings? I don't think I was able to get one of your flights, was I? There was that flight of yours up to Driffield. I noticed that was quite early on.
That was my first 100k. Yeah. It's about 120 something, weren't it? What year was that? Do you know? It must be about almost 20 years ago.
Yeah, 2005-ish, I think it was. Yeah.
I don't remember much about it.
Yeah.
Do you know how many pints of real ale I've had since
More than 20. More than 20.
I remember
Were
when
they all enjoyable?
when I flew over 100k,
Yeah.
when I got to 100k, I took a photograph of me Garmin saying 100k on it. And
That dates you.
that's the first
Just saying the word Garmin.
That's the first bit of the flight I remember.
Yeah.
I remember flying into the Wolves. the sort of low hills of the Wolves. And
Yeah, here's the walls.
it was pretty blue, and there was like clouds really high up, like there must have been 6 grand or something, and I couldn't get to them, but they were working a bit, and you could get up, and I got like another, I don't know, I got a few grand, and I drifted around for ages, and I got another 30, 40k out of the Wolves.
Yeah.
I think I won the day that day. But I mean, from Iron, it's so much. That was from Iron, weren't it?
Yeah.
Iron,
Yeah.
whatever. It's so much easier than Parlick. For those people that just fly Parlick, you don't realise how easy it is if you go to Bradwell or Iron or Mill Hill.
Yeah.
I've never flown less than 100k at Mill Hill, and I've been there 6 or 7 times.
Just over all weekends, eh?
It's so easy, isn't it? You know, and Iron is dead easy as well. On a good day.
I mean, the changes in landscape, but it's the aerology of Parlick that's.
Well, it's the distance from the sea, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mostly.
So what?
And you're in the flaps as well, aren't you?
Yeah. I mean, so you know, here. I mean, one thing you've done successfully. So, Ian, here, nice and high. You're probably passing over Rushup or maybe Stanage or somewhere like that. Maybe a little bit south of Stanage.
Yeah, Stanage. Like,
Yeah. Because you got a fairly northerly track over Sheffield. You actually come out and then get another top up on the flats. So you successfully navigated all of that depressed air, you know, because your meteo air coming from the southwest to the northeast is being depressed as it's forced down the hill. So the guaranteed less thermal activity as you're coming out of the Dales this way, or the Derby Dales in this case from the peak. Climb over the flats, or well, it's kind of rolling around Sheffield, northern Sheffield and Rotherham, isn't it? But what happens here before you get to Donny at Mexborough? Super low.
I've no idea. It's 20 years ago. Like, I really can't remember. I don't know. I honestly, I can't remember any of the flight.
Yeah.
Until I took a photograph of me again with Early on. And then I do kind of remember drifting into the walls and high base and mostly blue. I mean, I've flown from Iron that many times.
But it's always, you know, it's always a good thing to have a little bit of a model in your head of maybe what's going on.
I remember one time we went from Iron, and probably not this time. And we all climbed up, and we were super high. We were like 6 grand above Stanage, but behind Stanage on the back of the moor. And there was we were underneath this massive cloud. And everyone was like, right, let's go. And I said, just stop. And I said, look around. Everything's blue. There's nothing at all to go for. And I said, just wait under this cloud. And we just ended up drifting, and then we carried on. I don't know if it was that day. It probably wasn't. But, you know, sometimes that's just a bit of a learning thing, isn't it?
Was this in a gaggle or mostly on your own?
I think that was. Well, certainly the last bit was all on my own. I can't remember the start of it.
Yeah.
Did you have Brad's corridor?
I can't even remember.
Oh no, it's before. It's before that. No, because yeah. I mean, Rad's is Finningley here, below Doncaster, but back then it was still RAF Finningley, having been decommissioned.
Oh, so it wasn't even there?
Robin Hood hadn't built the first time. Now it's been built the second time, and we'll just have to wait for it to fail the second time as well.
There was an airport in Sheffield at that
There was
time.
Sheffield International. He went to Scotland and Wales. So you know, I kind of like to have a bit of a model of what's going on, either with local winds, you know, maybe like local alpine winds, or what's happening in the valleys and across the fells as you go through the dales. You know, what I'm thinking of here is, you know, it's early in the day, you've got a good climb out, you get a nice top up here, you're down into the flats, maybe, you know, these climbs aren't, you know, they're not getting you out of the flats super tall. So maybe all of this is a little bit more affected by the inversion. It's not
I honestly,
allowing you to climb out.
years ago, I can't really remember.
But you get, I mean, look at that. This you get here. You're right next to the river, where sea air is going to be rushing in up the
Yeah, you
Humber
do
estuary.
sometimes get convergence around there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's as high as you get.
Yeah.
You move away from that, and then you don't get anything after that. Which, you know, I mean, that's the longest part of your flight. And some of it's
I vaguely remember mincing about. There was clouds really high.
yeah.
At the end of the day, and I do remember kind of just mincing
Yeah.
at like $3,000 for 30-40k. Like,
Yeah, because I mean the Wolds is, you know, it's not high, it's a couple hundred metres high maybe. So sometimes it's not enough to generate thermals that will break through an inversion, but as you say, it's also the end of the day as well.
IAM is a brilliant hill to go and fly 100k or more. It really is. It's a shitty little hill to get away from.
Just don't go there with more than 5 people.
When you get away, it's really good. And the best time is when you've had a high pressure for a week or so.
Yeah.
As the low pressure comes in, RAS might not even work it out. The low pressure comes in, so basically you've got a southwesterly, haven't you? So you've had a big high pressure, and the low pressure's coming in, a bit like last couple of days really. So the wind turns southwest, and because the pressure's just dropped a bit, it works really well at IAM and Ian, and that's the time to go and fly there. And often, as you're flying, you'll get to say like York, and you'll see the warm front coming in, and you'll see all the cloud, and Parlick will be crap because it got under the wall. All that cloud from that warm front was over Parlick at like 10 o'clock in the morning. But if you're going north or northeast, you'll always just be ahead of that, and you're usually racing that cloud from the warm front that's coming in.
There you go, Butty. See what Phil can do with half an hour's notice.
You never told me.
So I wanted to round off with the routes, and you know, there's tools to get you to 100k, but there's difficulties downwind that you're going to encounter. What are the for the general routes that we take? So some of this is Pennine related as well. So the gotchas that we've got from the northwesterlies in the Dales. So I've put this at Dodd, Weatherfell, but there's other west northwests that we've got around there as well. You know, you've got Nidderdale, which John is intimately familiar with, around there. You've got Leeds Bradford CTA as well. To be honest, it's unless you've got a lot of north in the wind, and you've got a lot of, because quite often as you go up, there'll be a little bit of a change in the angle. You'll get a veer in the wind direction as you go up, which will turn it more northerly in the west. You can have an issue with Leeds Bradford airspace, but that's very much the sort of small proportion of flights that I've taken there. But by far the most difficult thing that you've got to be aware of is dropping down into the Vale of York. Is the different aerology there. It might be a wind that's going north-south. It's certainly going to be less active you might be going out into the blue, having had plenty of cloud in the Dales. And from time to time, you know, there's mistakes I've made, and I've flopped into somewhere near Harrogate, which isn't too bad for me getting home, actually, usually a quick hitch. But in a light wind, quite often, you know, with the Dales being active, you could be flying into wind as you come out of the Dales, having left it in a west-northwest. In which case, you know, I mean, it's an upland area. It will be drawing air into it on an active day. Realise that. Maybe it's not 100k in one direction, maybe it's 50k out and 50k return. I think David Smart and a couple of other people put one of those in just a couple of years ago. And I was down on the ground with Jake Herbert, who you'd have thought would know better, but not that day. And then you've got a whole selection of ATZs, drop zones, Matses, and ATZs, as I said. Classic direction, but we've just not had those winds for quite a while.
How many Dales members live under that group?
Well, so membership,
10%,
yeah, I mean membership is in all of these towns and then round here like that. So
it's a bit less daunting for someone who's flying home.
oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
No, you need to get Martin Baxter's phone number because he's there. He's chairman, so he'd be happy to represent the club well. Southerlies and southeasterlies, you can see what a range of flights we've got. And only a few times have we been able to take advantage of these. Yeah, I mean, Chris, the Hexham day, past Hexham, I think you were you Anik or something like that? Yeah. But also southeasterlies as well, and you know we've had years that have been more tending towards the southeasterlies. It puts you in the Eden Valley, you know, generally from sites like Semenwater or Whernside.
It's suddenly from Parlick.
Yeah.
One of our problems is Spadeham. That danger area.
Yeah. So.
Because
wait a minute. That's Otterburn. That's Spadeham. Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's huge and it goes up to 5,000 or 6,000 feet.
Yeah. Spadeham is quite often not fully open, and quite often you'll just have this small central area here where there's activity. Do you know this?
I know in the North-South Cup they got permission to cross it a few years back when they did 200k.
Yes, yeah, to Skipton or somewhere like that, yeah.
But there's published phone numbers for every one of the danger areas.
For Otterburn.
For Otterburn, yeah. Otterburn was closed earlier this week. I was talking with a major who was on duty up there earlier this week, and he said that no problem if you want to fly through it. So you can ring them the day before, and they'll tell you if they're active or not.
Yeah. Warcop publishes.
Warcop's always active. They'll never say that they're open there.
It does publish a few dates when it's open for walkers.
Yeah.
I've
never had them tell me that they're open for flying.
Yeah. So you know, I mean, I publish a few gotchas for here. You know, the Warcop range, the Eden Valley. The Eden Valley can both give and take away. You know, as you come into the Eden Valley, below Appleby and Westmoreland, but above the Howgirls, you've got this massive limestone outcropping ridge and sort of karstic landscape, and that bakes in the sun, and that's sometimes where I've taken amazing climbs out and just flown to Penrith on the one climb from there. But of course, you know, it's it's a bumpy valley. It's not flat, so all hope is not lost when you're in the Eden Valley. It's just that it can be difficult sometimes. It's also the place that the sea breeze from the Solway Firth and north of the Lake District rushes down. So late in the day, that's going to be an issue. But also, as something I only found out last year, it's famous for convergence zones as well. So we had a task at the Lakes Charity Classic last summer. It was a run up from Alcock Tyne, Grasmere, yeah. Almost up to Clough Head. And then from there over Ullswater, and I took a bloody excellent 3-metre climb from low down out of Ullswater, apparently with the air coming off the water itself. Don't know how that happened, but from here crossing the motorway, Ben Keyes and Ed Cleesby and the task setters totally knew about this, but I didn't know about this convergence zone that sets up, and in just a light westerly or a southwesterly, but the sea breeze is coming down here and forcing air generally this way. The sea breeze is coming up from here and goes through the T-Bay and passes on the A6 going towards Shap, and then dropping down from Shap to Appleby and Westmont. And I just put my glider sort of vaguely into wind, vaguely in the direction that I was going in, or sorry, vaguely downwind and vaguely in the direction I was going in. So I was sort of tacking and just didn't go down, and then spent 20 minutes trying to get down over goal. So there's a lovely bit of convergence in the Eden Valley as well. Sea breeze on the Solway Firth, that's got me a couple of times. It's got a lot of people. So it's always worth recognising that here you're on baking land. If you can get high around Carlisle, if you can keep inland, fly around or fly over the sea breeze that might be coming in from the Solway Firth, that's much the better. I've noticed some big wind changes when I've been just short of Gretna.
You know that if you drive up the motorway from Penrith,
yeah,
there's like, I don't even know what they're called, there's like a line of really low hills that go up to Carlisle.
Brilliant.
There's
Yes.
always a line of cloud above that.
Yeah.
When you drive up to Scotland, you can see it, and I have flown up it. It's dead easy till you get to the Solway Firth and then bomb out because the sea breeze comes in. But that line of hills,
Yeah.
there's always a in a southerly,
Yeah.
there's always a convergence line of.
Yeah. That line of hills there, just maybe 200 metres high. This line of hills, the Greystoke estate here, or down the centre of the valley with the M6. We've had people, go all of those directions and be successful. But this low line of hills, that's saved my bacon a few times.
Yeah, they work really well.
Yeah.
I've been decked by sea air coming in from Arnside.
I was going to ask about this. So down here,
Yeah.
there's quite a few little bumpy hills.
It was on a northwesterly from Clough.
Yeah.
Pushing down the M6, and I went down at Farleton.
That bit from sort of around TV up to Sharp, there's a lot of descending air there.
Here.
Yeah.
Okay.
You get the sea air coming up and it
In a
goes over the
southerly,
hills
a
and then it
northerly, a
drops down
westerly.
and
Yeah. Okay.
I was in a northwesterly and I got hit by a.
So you were you'd done a bit of the milk run, you'd come out over Windermere,
Yeah,
Kendal.
that's it. Yeah. And then I got hit by the sea air, a headwind.
Coming up that way.
Yeah.
You have to stay.
What would you have done different?
Gone inland.
Yeah.
Definitely would have gone inland earlier.
So think early and go for Sedberg, or maybe even
there's a line
follow
of
this
hills,
high
isn't
ground.
there? And you have to stay over that line of hills, and there's a motorway. We call it a motorway, don't we?
Certainly going up in a southerly, be aware there's all sorts of aircraft descending into Newcastle Airport. And it's quite a big holiday airport, so there's a lot of 737s just coming over from Ireland or coming up the Irish Sea and turning in. Give them a wave. Sometimes they wave back. Classic southwesterly. So these lines, these big blue lines, they're all 100k measured on the map. I said we were getting a lot of southwesterlies in the last few years in the Dales. You can just about fit 100k in a straight line. Maybe if you're landing on the cliff edge, toes on the cliff edge at Skinning Grove. But you can also just about fit 100k if you're landing around Washington, just north of Sunderland. And you can get under this airspace. That's quite a well-worn track, but coming past Bishop Auckland, Spennymoor, Durham, absolutely wonderful. Something to be aware of at Durham is a prison, high security prison there. They do not like being overflown. But before that, and certainly on a couple of the routes from Parlick, from Fairstake, you're going to have issues like Feldon and Bellaby ranges to deal with. They might look quite small, but we're when there's a little bit more south in the wind, we're going up that way from Windbank in the Dales, and so you've got quite a bit less time before you get to them, before you have to make a decision: am I going south? Am I going to the west? Or am I going to go through them? All have been done, but they go quite high. It's not guaranteed that you will get over them from cloud base, whatever that might happen to be. Again, with that 100k and a bit of south in it from Parlick, you'll get 100 in just before you have to start worrying about the airspace stepping down into Newcastle. And here it's probably at about 5,500 feet, but I think in here you're probably at about 3,000 or something like that. It gets very cruel very quickly, so generally you have to make a decision to go up the west side or put yourself on, you can fly under this for a while. But you're putting yourself on a limit to the distance you can fly because you run out of airspace or you run out of land when the coast hits you. But generally you've got an interesting sea breeze sort of situation up here. By the time you get there, sometimes it can be quite rough, sometimes it's just beautiful lift all over the place. Pete Darwood coming into Sunderland, I think a couple of years ago. Well, in fact, we all made the coast really, didn't we?
Built up though, isn't it?
It's quite built up, yeah, but there's big, there's lots of parks and sort of rough meadows to land in. Don't let that get in the way of 3 figures on the GPS. But yeah, there's the most to worry about in the southwest, but in the southwest we do generally get good usable air these days coming across both the Dales and all of your big flights have been done in a south or a west or some combination of that. Just to give you an idea of, so we're kind of looking in this area here and we're looking in this direction. that's what you need to thread your way through. So pretty much impossible to get around and through the mats before you hit the CTA for Middlesbrough here. But flying through the mats, so long as you're aware that there's a route into RAF Leeming here. And these are Felderman and Bellaby ranges. Active, I think, most weekdays, Bellaby not on the weekend.
It's a bit open to discussion, isn't it?
Yeah. One other thing that we did find, so Bellaby, which is only, it's a tiny gun range here, but the whole area is just blanked off. We've got this area behind it, Bardon Moor, which looks, I mean, it looks kind of quite military. It's called the Military Dry Training Area. Anybody know about these? No? Okay. Missing from the air map, because, you know, anybody with an air map has got a propeller on the front or something, and they land at an airport or an airfield. This is a military dry training area that can be active, and when it's active, they put signs up on the public footpaths and the roads telling you not to come in. They may or may not be shooting, so you may not hear it from the air. It's there. We've had people land in it, and no issue with getting out. You just follow the footpaths or follow the roads. But we never know when it's active. They've just happened to land in it when it's not been active. Untested, but be aware of it. And then, just drawing things to a close, you know, obviously, with Phil destroying all hope and saying it's much better everywhere else than Parliament.
True, that's true.
But you know, I guess that's what takes you know, Britain to the top of the national, international leagues from time to time. When the difficult flying needs to be done, it's the Brits who can cope with it. There's a couple of other ways of knocking on with 100k. So Bartonfell has a nice little line from the lake. So the lakes, if you're flying in the centre of the lakes, and you know, the Milk Run, Clough, you know, down to the top of Windermere and back again, if that's working, generally the rest of the country is a bit like, you know, overdeveloped, could be right or inverted. Sorry, that's what I'm trying to get to. If it's nicely working in the lakes, it's probably a bit subsided everywhere else. But Bartonfell is on the east side of the lakes. It's a much drier aerology, and you're straight down a set of upland areas into the north side of the Dales, the valley to the north of Wensleydale, and then out across the north side of the Vale of York. Been done quite a few times. You'll get to 100 somewhere around the A1. Porlick, that was in relation to where else can you go from the Dales to do 100. But of course, Porlick's got two ways. All you've got to do is get somewhere near Carlisle, and there's 100 in it. A little bit more defended, although you can see the sea from Model, but at Carlton Bank seems to be less sea air affected. But going straight north-south from Model, Carlton Bank, absolutely doable, and crossing the Humber estuary at about 90 kilometres. This is obviously a little bit more inland. The times I've done that, and the one time across the Humber estuary, it was a lot nearer the bridge, and we were fighting the west-northwest drift. So it was climb, glide, climb, glide, climb, glide. Repeat 22 times. And I guess the one other thing that you need to take away, or the one thing that I've been banging on about, is patience. One of the things that we have put together, and I mentioned the 10 to 100 group early on, is, you know, I mean, it's all right, you know, with the instant messaging, you get your own group of pilots together. I'm chief coach for the Dales Club, so a member that has now left the club and myself, we set up this 10 to 100 group. It's a loose affiliation. It's a group where I was wanting to engender people to get themselves together, to have flying buddies, to have small subgroups that went out and planned little tasks, because they could trust each other with their flying, they could cover for each other with transports, and arrange with themselves to leave cars, and we could all share post-flight analysis and warnings of good conditions coming up, and, you know, where to meet on the hill. So all of the logistics and some of the teaching is what the 10 to 100 group is there for. And nobody ever really sort of graduates, and, you know, anybody who's basically pilot or very close to becoming pilot is quite welcome to join. And that's something that's got people, you know, past their first distance flights, at least a couple a year. And also the fact that it's there is encouraging the sort of the bulk of the CPs that the Dales Club still has. You know, maybe a third of our club is still CP in one discipline or the other, to get their pilot and know that they're going to have some ready mix friends out there. So it's, you know, it's something I'd encourage other clubs to do. Quite happy if pilots here, if they want to join the 10 to 100 and contribute and listen for the messages coming out and meet us on the hill. That is about it. Actually, the one thing I did want to mention, I just pushed my personal best for a Pennine flight, Pennine cross country. I almost got to Waddington. So yeah, take that with a pinch of salt. I will be back to do better. Thanks for your time.
Just want to say thanks, Pete. That was riveting. Really enjoyed that.
You're welcome.
And I think, you know, judging from the reaction, everybody else enjoyed it very much. Be great to see you back here, showing us the way anytime, and we'll make more of an effort, I think, to go up to the Dales and enjoy your beautiful scenery up there too.
Well, indeed. Well, I mean, I keep saying it every year, but from Longridge, I can fly over Accrington and Blackburn, and quite a few places I'm growing up. So I've still got that to do. That's a task I've still got to get my head around and do. So I'll be back. Yeah.
Anyway, thanks again, and thanks to everybody else who contributed, John and Phil and Chris. Thank you very much. Very good of you.
Cheers.
Thank you.